spider has saved the woman who is giving birth to a child. It also gave the kid remarkable power to subdue a rival who betrayed her mother. This movie opens up with Constance, who is a researcher. One day, Constance and a man named Ezekiel were in the wilderness taking pictures of spider webs for research purposes. They were looking for spiders but couldn't find any. Ezekiel talked about its inhabitants, which were thought to give people special abilities. Constance said that the inhabitants were mythical spider people who used black poison to punish bad men. While Constance was talking, she felt pain in her stomach, which she thought was from the baby she was carrying. She refused to rest, though, because she thought she was close to what she was looking for. Ezekiel told her to take a break, but she said there wasn't time and thanked him for the umbrella he gave her. After talking to Constance, Ezekiel went back to their shelter to look for more information when Constance showed up with a jar full of small spiders. Even though Constance didn't want to give Ezekiel the jar with the spiders, he insisted on taking it. He then shot Constance and ran away, but just in time, the inhabitants arrived and helped Constance. They brought her to their place and had a small spider bite her to help her heal. This is also where she gave birth to her baby. A man named Santiago led the help for Constance and the birth. He told Constance's child that she would have problems in the future. After a few years, Constance's child is now an adult and her name is Cassandra Webb, whom we will call Madam Webb. Madam Webb became a paramedic and her story began in an ambulance with her partner and co-worker, Ben Parker. They were taking a woman to the hospital right away for treatment when Madam Webb met Maddie Franklin. Maddie Franklin suddenly popped up in front of the ambulance while skateboarding to school. The doctor told Madam Webb and Ben that the patient they brought would be fine. With the doctor was the little boy who was the child of the woman they helped. He gave them a piece of paper as a thank you gift for helping his mother. Madam Webb suggested that Ben take it, but he refused. At the same hospital, Julia Cornwall, the stepdaughter of the woman Madam Webb and Ben helped, was also there to check on her mother during lunchtime. Madam Webb was still thinking about where to take the child's card because she and Ben didn't like talking about family. But Ben said he might be thinking about starting a family and adopting a dog. He also said he had met someone, and from Madam Webb's point of view, it seemed serious. Madam Webb joked that the woman was lucky, and Ben showed her his fortune cookie message, which said, "You have winning personalities." Madam Webb got home. She fed her cat milk. She suddenly remembered that she should check the card the child had given her. She put it in her cabinet with memories of her family. Madam Webb also thought about opening one of her mother's journals about spiders and reading more of her mother's memories. The next day, they helped a man who had an accident on the side of the bridge and whose car was about to fall off. Madam Webb and Ben pulled him out, but Madam Webb got stuck inside the car as it went into the water. While she was underwater, she woke up seeing webs and things that looked like the letter S. She heard voices and suddenly woke up as Ben saved her and brought her back to life. As Ben checked Madam Webb's signs, she had a memory and could see what he was about to say. This confused them. Also, Madam Webb told him she was fine and just wanted to go home. On the other hand, Ezekiel went to a big palace with orchestras playing and gave a woman a magazine. He then took her to a private room where they hooked up. Later, he had a dream in which 3 women with spider-like faces appeared and one of them kicked him out of a window, killing him. He sat down in shock, and the woman next to him asked him if he was having a nightmare. Ezekiel told her that he sees this vision all the time. He also said that the National Agency of Security had been looking for him for a long time. The woman who was looking for him didn't know that Ezekiel was one of the people they were looking for. The woman tried to arrest him, but he stopped her from pulling out a gun, got information from her, killed her, and then took her ID. Aside from this, Madam Webb went to the gender reveal of Ben's sister-in-law, who seems to be Mary. Outside, she briefly chatted with Ben and his friend before going inside to meet Mary. They sat with other women and tried to guess the name of Mary's baby. Suddenly, the same thing happened again, which surprised Madam Webb when Mary asked her to guess the name of the baby again. She blurted out that they had already done this, which confused everyone. When Ben called Madam Webb to tell her there was a fire, Madam Webb told him she was having déjà vu. Ben and Madam Webb went to the fire scene to help, and Madam Webb suddenly saw what would happen there, including what would happen to her male companion. She told her companion what she saw and offered to take over driving, but he refused. And it was too late because her companion's car crashed as she had seen the vision. Besides, Ezekiel talks to his assistant, Amaria, about finding the women who are supposed to kill him. Amaria shows him pictures that might match the vision Ezekiel had. Ezekiel says that the women are still teens now, but in the future they will be adults. He tells Amaria to find the specific woman and promises her that she will be rewarded for her efforts. Also, Madam Webb had her eyes checked, and the results were normal. She asked the doctor about the visions she was having, and the doctor said that trauma could be the cause. Madam Webb didn't believe this because she had seen her friend die. The doctor showed Madam Webb that all of her test results were normal and suggested that she should take rest and watch movies. Following her doctor's advice, Madam Webb watched films, but Ben still checked on her often and seemed worried. When Madam Webb didn't answer, she got up to heat some food when something was thrown outside. When she opened the door, though, it was gone. She realized she was seeing things that would happen in the future again. However, Ezekiel's subordinate, Amaria, saw Madam Webb and Julia walking alone and talked to Ezekiel about it. At the same time, Madam Webb got on a train and saw that Ezekiel would search for them again, this time to hurt Anya, Julia, and even Maddie, who was on the same train. Things started slowly, with Anya getting on first, then Julia, and finally Maddie. Concerned, Madam Webb did something, telling people that she could see that staying on the train would put them at risk. They fled when she proclaimed an emergency and threatened to harm them with Ezekiel. As they got off the train, Ezekiel came in to look for them. Maddie got mad at Madam Webb for not giving her skateboard, but she told everyone to run. Madam Webb saw Ezekiel inside the train and told them to run, but she saw police in the direction they were supposed to run. Julia then yelled that Madam Webb was trying to kidnap them, and Madam Webb pointed to the ceiling where Ezekiel was crawling towards them and told them that Ezekiel planned to kill them. When the lights went out on the train, Madam Webb thought about getting off. She saw Ezekiel above the train, who looked like a dark Spider-Man. They ran out, but Madam Webb was arrested. Suddenly, Ezekiel pulled them, making a scene. The police fired at Ezekiel, but he didn't get hit and he threw them away. When Madam Webb and the others got into her car, they were shocked and talking about what happened. Madam Webb introduced herself and asked for their names. Julia thanked Madam Webb for saving them. Also, Madam Webb was happy to hear on the radio that someone was being sought for causing trouble at Grand Central Terminal. However, it turned out that they were talking about her as the suspected kidnapper of 3 teens. They realized that they were the only ones who saw Ezekiel climbing on the ceiling and chasing them. Julia thought that everyone thought Madam Webb was the kidnapper since she had reported it to the police. Madam Webb explained that it wasn't a kidnapping and made a plan. On the other side, Ezekiel kept looking for them and called Amaria. As they were being found, he wondered how the 4 knew he was coming. He told Amaria to beat the police to the 4 people they were hiding in the forest. Madam Webb said she had never seen the man chasing them before. Maddie asked her how she knew, and Julia realized Madam Webb was the paramedic who saved her and her stepmother. Also, Anya, who resided in their building, knew who Cassie was. They glanced at Maddie in confusion, and Madam Webb explained that Maddie had turned her off. Madam Webb revealed that she could see into the future when Julia questioned her true identity. Maddie laughed and threw something at Madam Webb to show her she was wrong because Madam Webb didn't think Maddie would throw something at her. Julia suggested giving Madam Webb a chance, and Madam Webb said she couldn't change what would happen but was sure she had saved their lives. Julia asked Madam Webb how her ability worked, and Madam Webb said she couldn't control it. Maddie asked Madam Webb if she knew what was going to happen. Even though they didn't want to, Madam Webb told them she'd be back in 3 hours and not to do anything stupid. When Madam Webb got home, she took off her license plate and read her mother's journal again about the Las Aranas. She thought it might be about the man they met, so she tried to stick to the wall like the man. But it didn't work. As she read on, she learned that the Aranas could see the future like her. Still in the forest, Maddie suggested going to get food, but Julia said they should stay put because Madam Webb told them to. Anya said they didn't have any money, but Maddie said she did. Anya got angry and said that just because Maddie had money didn't mean she could do whatever she wanted. Julia asked Maddie about her family, and she said they lived with maids. When they finally agreed to go to the closest restaurant, Maddie saw Julia smiling at some men behind them. On the other hand, Ezekiel left right away after getting the call, and when Madam Webb arrived to look for the 3, they weren't there. Instead, she found them dancing on a table with men. She tried to stop them, but as they left, Ezekiel grabbed Julia and hit her. Ezekiel then stabbed Madam Webb. But she didn't go into the restaurant because she knew something bad was going to happen soon, so she got into her car. Julia, Maddie, and Anna continued dancing at the table. Just in time, Madam Webb arrived and slammed her car into the restaurant, saving the 3 before they could board the vehicle. Ezekiel grabbed Cassie's leg, but in her rage, she kicked him out and drove off. The three became silent in shock as Julia apologized. Ezekiel, on the other hand, is still looking for them and talking to Ameria. Ameria told Ezekiel that Madame Webb had the last name Webb, which he recognized. They were last being chased by Ezekiel by the restaurant, so Madame Webb chose to go back there. She was shocked when she saw the same things happen again and heard Ezekiel talking to her future self. He told them that these three girls would kill her and take her powers in the future. He put pressure on her to tell everyone where they were. Madame Webb woke up and realized it was all a dream. She quickly woke up the other three girls. She told them that the man's hands were full of poisons that were hurting him. It gets more harmful to the body as it comes into touch with it. Someone asked Madame Webb what would happen, and she said her heart would stop. After that, she taught them how to do CPR. Maddie told Madame Webb that she thought she was a good teacher, which was something she had never said before. She showed a picture of her mother and Ezekiel, the guy who was after them. Anya asked Madame Webb if her mother knew Ezekiel, and she said that she might. Maddie thought it might have been all because of Madame Webb. But Madame Webb told her that the only thing she knew about her mother was that she liked to study spiders, which was written in her notebook. Madame Webb left because she wanted to find out what was going on. When Ben got there, she talked to him, but when he asked what was going on, Madame Webb just left and told him she would be back. Madame Webb kept reading her mom's book as she got on the bus. When she got to the forest where her mom used to look for spiders, Santiago appeared behind her out of nowhere. Madame Webb was interested in what Santiago had to say about going back. Santiago said that Madame Webb's mom went there to get healing qualities from spiders because she thought she was safe. He said that Constance's friend Ezekiel lied to her because he was selfish, which led to the spiders being stolen and Ezekiel's curse. He took Madame Webb to the place where her mother died and the place where she was born. Madame Webb asked her mom why she was putting her own child's life at risk to get there. Santiago said that her mother was scared about Madame Webb's future and that the threat didn't go away when Madame Webb was born. Santiago then told how her mother was lied to by being pushed into the water out of the blue. Madame Webb saw her mother's past lives under the water, including the genetic conditions she should have had, her mother's search for spiders to heal her, and the final hug that caused her mother to disappear. Madame Webb realized she had misunderstood how much her mother cared about her, and Santiago told her that we have to make adjustments for the people we love sometimes. Madame Webb was curious about how she could connect with her mother. Santiago told her that Madame Webb had made the link herself, stressing that she needed to learn more about herself and that her past was part of the reason she was there. Madame Webb said she had to stop Ezekiel from killing the three girls, and Santiago told her that once she learned her power, she would be able to be in more than one place at once and be the only one who could change the future. He also said that Madame Webb would have a lot of power because she was responsible. Ezekiel is still upset because he can't find the girls and keeps putting pressure on Ameria for not being able to do it. He tells Ameria that the girls are going to kill him and that he can also kill her. Ben, Julia, Anya, and Maddie were watching a movie together and making jokes about each other when Mary walked in and looked like she was in labor. They quickly went to the hospital, where Ameria quickly found them and told Ezekiel what had happened. He quickly left to talk to them. As Madame Webb got home, she looked through the window and saw that they weren't there. She has a vision from the future of the fight that is about to happen, in which Ezekiel will quickly attack Julia. Madame Webb took charge of the ambulance she saw just as Ezekiel was coming up behind the three women and their friends. When Ezekiel saw the women, Madame Webb stepped in and crashed the ambulance, setting off the bomb that Ezekiel was carrying. Madame Webb told Ben to take Mary to the closest hospital right away, and she and the other three women quickly left the scene. Anya was told by Madame Webb to use an automated external defibrillator and aim it at Ezekiel's head in the ambulance seat to shock him. The plan worked because Ezekiel touched the roof and got shocked, which kept everyone else from getting hurt. While the ambulance was on the road, it broke down. Madame Webb knew right away what would happen. She quickly came up with a plan. They ran away as soon as Madame Webb promised to protect them no matter what. As they waited for Ezekiel to arrive, they set off fireworks all over the place. When Ezekiel caught up to them and tried to chase them, the flames got in the way. They ran quickly towards a coming helicopter, but just as it went off, Madame Webb saw what would happen in a short fight. Before the plane went off, she talked to Ezekiel. Madame Webb remembered what Santiago had said about controlling her power, which would let her be in more than one place at once and make her the only one who could change the future. Even though Ezekiel hit her in the gut, she was able to do this and keep Maddie, Anna, and Julia from falling. She continued to watch what was happening. Ezekiel was following Madame Webb as she climbed a sign. After getting to the top, Ezekiel was killed when he got caught under falling metal. When Madame Webb fell into the water, a fireworks went off and hurt her eyes right away. Then we see a S next to her. Julia saved her, and with the help of CPR, they were able to bring her back to life. At the same time, Mary gave birth, and Madame Webb, who was in the hospital, told Julia that she has everything she needs at her residence. Julie brought food and texts from Madame Webb. Anya asked Madame Webb if she could see them in the future, and Madame Webb said that her eyesight had gotten better. Madame Webb said yes, saying that she thought Maddie was presented as someone who never gives up, Anna as someone who stands up for what she believes in, and Julia as someone stronger than Madame Webb. Even though Maddie and Madame Webb didn't know what would happen in the future, they could still understand what she said, which shows how important Madame Webb's insights were. The movie finishes. If you like this movie, then don't forget to subscribe our channel.